Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. Yeah, I'm not Judy Garland, and I can't sing either. There's a place away. By the way, this is a side note. You know the reason why that movie is so incredibly popular, The Wizard of Oz, is because it is a metaphysical analogy. It's absolute, total metaphysics. Little Judy Garland there, who's playing Dorothy, she has to follow the path, and she encounters all these evils along the way, and the friends, and she finally reaches her destination. The grand guru, the great wizard, is nothing but a charlatan, you know, with some goofy little magic tricks that aren't actual magic, and she's told that she had the whole power the whole time to go back home, and she didn't even have to travel the path or seek out a crazy wizard who had no real power that everybody thought was this guru. You know, it's just nothing other than pure metaphysics. The same thing with the Matrix. The Matrix is pure metaphysics. Same thing with Lord of the Rings. Every timeless movie that people really, really, really love. Wizard of Oz, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings. There are other movies like that. Bad actress, but one of the movies I like is called Lucy, starring Scarlett Johansson. Not a good actress at all, but still a really good movie. That's nothing but pure metaphysics. I don't say it actually equates with, you know, The Wizard of Oz or anything like that, but people's like, I don't know what it is, but I gotta watch this movie 50 times. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because these movies are pure metaphysics. There's things between the self and the self, and this always confuses people, because there's three selves. Technically, there's two selves, but if we want to be really nitpicky, there's three selves. Let's first make an agreement that the psychophysical, i.e. the corporeal, in Pali, the rupa vedana sana sankara vinyanam, i.e. the psychophysical namarupa, forms, feelings, perceptions, impulses, and existential consciousness. And of course, we're talking about English. That's a problem. When we say soul, it means were we talking about Old English or New English? Because like Shakespearean English, they would talk about living creatures walking the streets as a soul. Was like, oh, governor, nary was a soul seen today due to bad weather. We talk about soul as a psychophysical being, and that, of course, is one soul, or we can say the lowest form of the soul. Life is the composite, of course, of spirit and matter. That's the consubstantiality of both, which, of course, makes life. There's no soul in the body. There's not a denial of soul, which is where the Buddhists, and I use the term loosely, Buddhists, are extremely confused. They think that original, and I emphasize the word original, they thought there was no soul. They thought a nada, or a natman. That's what's common via negativa, i.e. neri neri, found in the Upanishads, and also too in Advaita Vedanta. This whole idea that there's no soul in Buddhism, as they like to claim, and you could type that in on Wikipedia or anything, you type in anada or anatman, they're both the same word, Pali, Sanskrit, Wikipedia, everything. Buddhism is different than Hinduism. It taught that there was no soul, anada. There's no such passage at all. It's via negativa. You know, there's no fire inside this iMac monitor. There's no signal in the radio. Like if you gave a radio to a caveman, he might like beat it. Looking for where the spirit voices. Where are they? It's like, you know, smash the radio. He gave it to somebody from the 1600s. They might do the same thing. Oh my God, it's possessed. It's witchcraft. Or even the same thing with a TV set. Not showing a fireplace, but like, you know, it's a TV show. They like smash it instantly with a rock, looking for the little people inside of it. Yeah, no little people inside of a TV set. There's no soul in the body. Yeah, this is not a denial of either the soul, not a denial of people, of course, which do exist. This is where the Buddhists are really, really, really confused, because I can say this and you could think it is egotistical, and I don't care. I am the world's absolute #1 foremost authority on the term anara and anatman. There is nobody on this earth that comes within 1,000,000 miles of knowing more about that topic than I do. Literally nobody. It forms such an important premise of original, and I emphasize the word original Buddhism. It would be as silly to say there's no soul in original Buddhism as it would be for like a Christian to say, well, Christianity has nothing to do with Jesus, and it's not about you know, carrying what the Bible says. Like, well, that's just ridiculous. Of course it is. You know, it's just silly. It's just ludicrous. It's silly. It's absurd. It's nonsensical. So we have to talk about two different types of selves, and of course all forms of monistic metaphysics, Pythagorean, Platonic, Neoplatonic, Advaita Vedanta, Upanishads, the Vedas, original Buddhism, all spoke about different selves, of course. The broadcast, of course, is not the signal. Then people start talking about the broadcasting station tower, which is, of course, taking the analogy too far, but that would be akin, of course, to the agathon, or to the absolutes, or in the Pali or Sanskrit, that would be a reference to Brahman. Not Brahman as in some sort of god, deity, but meaning the absolute. Brahman, people are confused about this too. It's like they think there's a Hindu religion, which is there is no such thing. It refers to a people, not a religion. The only time Gautama, Sakyamuni Gautama, called his teachings anything was Samyutta Nikaya 5.4. He said, "What are your teachings to be called?" And he said, "My teachings are to be called Brahmayana," which means path to the absolute. Doesn't that make it really simple? That's no different than what any Pythagorean or Neoplatonist would say. And here enters in this neat little thing called Sophia Perennis, or perennial philosophy. Yeah? That's why I have nothing to do with religions. I don't ever want to discuss it. Modern Buddhism is a religion, just like any other religion. I was interested in what the original, simple, divine, extremely wise, logical metaphysics taught, not the religious wackadoodle nonsense that came after was built around it. And everything that came afterwards was religion. It's just craziness. Frou-frou, silliness. I'm interested in facts, logic, and wisdom. All forms of mystic metaphysics taught different selves, of course. So there's three different selves. Ultimately, of course, there's the psychophysical self. Of course, we're talking about Old English versus like Shakespearean English, for example, or Victorian English. They use the word soul or self to refer to different things. We're talking about, ultimately, the animating principle of the psychophysical heap, i.e. matter, which, of course, is the pneumatic principle. People take that literally. Like, in other words, if you don't breathe, you die, right? If I stop breathing. It's not that air is literally the life force. That's being way, 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 way too literal. It's metaphysical analogy. Yes? Nobody thought that the actual air passing in and out of your lungs was the actual soul. It's just oxygen and nitrogen. The people back thousands of years ago were not stupid like that. They weren't. They didn't have technology, but they were not stupid. Yes, however, that root word in English is the same as it is in ancient Pali, and it's the exact same as it is in ancient Egyptian, atma, as in atmosphere or atmospheric, which is the study of the blowing of winds, i.e. weather phenomena, i.e. pneumatic principles that physically move across the face of the earth. You know, the winds, what's the weather? Atmosphere. Sanskrit, the word is atman, the transcendent self or soul, which would be, in a radio analogy, the signal, because the signal is not the broadcast. Yes? This is where the distinction between transmigration and reincarnation comes in. Yeah, even though this video is not about talking about that. People go, well, what about reincarnation? It's like, well, reincarnation is actually not taught in the Vedas or the Upanishads or original Buddhism. We're talking about the one and only transmigrant, not reincarnation. Yeah, it's not taught. Yeah, it's not. And we have the psychophysical self, or conventional or terrestrial soul, which we Bob, Sue, Larry, so on and so forth, with a specific personality, a specific consciousness, but consciousness goes no further than the psychophysical. Same thing with the broadcast of the radio. Each radio tunes into a signal at a given frequency, wavelength. It processes that with analog to digital converters. Then it goes through a lot of different things and it gets broadcast out the speaker. Yeah, what gets broadcast out would be analogous to the individual soul. Yeah, Bob, Sue, Larry with their unique beliefs and feelings. Yeah, and the individuated temporal consciousness, which is consubstantiality. Consubstantiality of matter and spirit. The consubstantial being, Bob, Sue, Larry, so on and so forth. Yep. So these are the two different selves. Of course, we want to talk about this in this video, but of course there's the absolute self, or absolute essence. And of course, we'll be talking about Tat Tvamasi, that thou art, or Tat would be a capital T, as in reference to Brahman, or the absolute, or as in Aham Brahmasmi. Translated means thou art Brahman, yeah, meaning the absolute, okay? When I talk about that transcendent self, but there are two conventional selves that are conventionally taught. Plato talks about this in his cave analogy. I don't know if you're familiar with Plato's cave analogy. Yeah. There's the self that's broadcast on the wall. There's the prisoner with their hands behind their back. And then there's the nous, or noetic transcendent self, which is antecedent to the prisoners. And then there's the absolute self, which is an analogy in Plato's cave to the sun, which is a light peeking through. There's another light in the cave, which is the fire, which the shadow of the puppets are being cast. By the way, that's not original to Plato. That's Pythagorean. It's very ancient. Plato's cave analogy was not written by Plato. It was brought forward to us in this period of time by Plato, but it is not original to Plato. Neither is the Timaeus, neither is the Parmenides. These are far, far, far older than Plato himself, of course. So the psychophysical self, of course, in original Buddhism, for example, is process, is anatta. There are 27 things in sutta that are called anatta. This is not the soul, that is not the soul. This is common Indian neti-neti. This is apophaticism. This is theurgy. This is the methodology of disobjectification, because this is a really important statement. Please remember it. Yeah? The psychophysical self is process, not essence. Yes? The psychophysical self is perpetual process. It has a beginning in time, an end in time. It can't be essence. It can't be. This is the psychophysical consciousness of Bob, Sue, Larry, so on and so forth. People change their mind over time. Some people don't grow in wisdom. They're set in their ways. Their minds are totally closed. You know what is way worse than a totally closed mind? A totally open mind. It means it's open to everything. Far better to have a totally closed mind than a totally open mind. You're supposed to have a gatekeeper at the mind that lets in the good stuff and keeps out the bad stuff. That, of course, is the best of minds, which most people don't have, and you weren't taught about any of this stuff in high school or college, unfortunately. The self in the Nikayas, which, like Digha Nikaya 2.154, the light and the refuge. To see self in the mere self, i.e. the transcendent self, with the conventional or psychophysical self, or see Atman in mir anatta, that which is anatta, i.e. the psychophysical or temporal self. And this in Pali is atani ka atati, Anguttara Nikaya 2.52. Theurgy, of course, is self-proximity. It is, of course, the implication of liberation when it's fulfilled, the implication of nibbana or nirvana, Sanskrit, Pali, same terminology, which is equal to transcendence. Obviously, the psychophysical self is equal to anatta, or the not spiritual self, the non-spirita sancta, the non-chitta, which the chitta is just the Pali word for nous, or spiritus sanctum, which is equal to process, is equal to temporal being, is equal to consubstantial life. Consubstantial life has a beginning in time and end in time because it is consubstantiality of matter and spirit. This is the lower self. Plato talks about this too. What is Buddhism to say? Original Buddhism. I emphasize the word original. This is not myself. Na misoata. And the term non-selfishness or anatta are predicated of the words, of course, of all things, sabidama anatta, which means all things within Mother Nature, which have a beginning in time and end in time, of course, are not the transcendent self. Are identical with the Brahmanical or the Vedic. Of those who are mortal, there is no self or soul. That would be no different than saying, of the radio, there is no signal in it. That's not a denial of the signal. The grand fallacy created by these materialists, these atomists, these Buddhists. I use the word loosely. Is they say, well, Buddhism is different than Hinduism. It taught the anatta or anatman. I was like, do you know what that word means? Yeah, it means no soul. I said the word is never, ever, in its 576 occurrences, ever used. This is not the soul, that's not the soul. This isn't the soul, that's not the soul. It's ridiculous. This is via negativa methodology, neti-neti. Apophata, this isn't the soul, that's not the soul. That's objective negation. That's what neti-neti, this is not the soul, that's not the soul, that's not the soul. If there were no soul, you would not say, this is the soul, that's not the soul. You would say, there's no soul. Well, what about, no, there's no soul. Psst. Stop asking. No soul, psst, period, nowhere, no, nada, period. The soul is called the permanent, the light, the charioteer, Attavasrati, Jataka 1441. Everything that is good and wholesome is the soul. So this idea of no soul, nihilism, is completely doctrinally absent. It doesn't exist anywhere. The soul is the refuge that I've gone into. There is no other refuge than the soul. Samyutta 3.196 is the most important passage. There is never a doctrine, of course, of no soul, rather a doctrine of what the soul or the self is not, i.e. anatta. There is that which is not the self. There's no such thing as a doctrine of no soul. That's not my opinion. It doesn't occur anywhere within the Nikayas. It's completely illogical. You can't talk about amatta game maga, the path to immortality, without the subject that is the nexus of immortality. There's a reflexive position taken by these secularists, i.e. these folks of religion. I know that anatta is merely a reflexive term meaning myself, oneself, yourself, himself. Well, that is a reflexive position regarding the psychophysical, which is anatta. Samyutta 3.196. What is the doctrine of evil? Maradama. What is the what does the term anatta? Anatta, venerable Gautama. What does anatta mean? Just this, Radha. Rupa anatta, Veda anatta, Sankara anatta, Vinyana anatta, Nama rupa anattati. i.e. the psychophysical is not the soul. That's what it means. It doesn't mean anything further than that. And yet, enter religion, and the materialists co-adopted this as their own, like a dog in the manger. Original Buddhism taught there was no soul. There's no such passage. Here's from Plato's Republic 439d. There are two within us in the expression self-control, implying that, of course, there is one that controls the other self, which is subject to control. And, of course, we know that nothing acts upon itself. Neither for the one self becomes and the other self is. In other words, only one self. There is ultimately only one transcendent self, i.e. the refuge, the light, Attasarana, Anandasarana, Atta Dipa Viharati. Dwell with the soul as one's light, Atta Dipa Viharati. The fair self, Kalyana versus the foul self, Papamatanam. The foul self, of course, is reference to the temporal psychophysical self. So, Anguttara Nikaya 1.149. And the great self, Mahata, versus the petty self, Apatumo, Anguttara Nikaya 1.249. So, all forms of monistic metaphysics speak of the exact same thing, three different selves. The temporal psychophysical self, no different than the radio regarding the broadcast out of the speaker, beginning in time and end in time. Transcendent self, which is the signal ab extra to the radio, and then the absolute self, which would be loosely analogous to the broadcast station. And then don't take that too far and talk about the person flipping the switches inside the broadcast station. That's taking the analogy too far. So, and this makes explaining transcendence simple. It makes explaining anamnesis simple. It makes explaining the distinction between transmigration and so-called reincarnation that Westerners are hung up on very, very, very simple. And everything, genuine metaphysics, are logical. They're simple. And, they don't require you to, throw all, common sense out the window like religious nonsense. It's like, it's crazy, but I'm just going to believe it. I don't have to understand it. It doesn't have to make any sense. You just have to believe it. Well, that's religion, folks. It's not metaphysics. So, by the way, if you go to the metaphysics section of a bookstore today, the only thing you can find is a bunch of white lighter, crystal rubbing, new age. I'm going to put a crystal in my head. Wait a minute, I got a crystal right here. And I can grab it, go home. Maybe burn some incense. Put up some little brass icons and little statues. And yeah, I'm not into any of that stuff because none of that stuff is conducive to illumination or self-proximity. It can't be by definition. So here's the three selves. And it kind of makes understanding things really, really simple. It does. I hope I kept it simple anyway. By the way, I am no lover of the fake and the book, fake book. and I'm on Parler now. I've never been on Twitter. I never liked fake book. And so check me out on Parler below. I don't tell anybody to join or anything like that. And I just have to get away from the totalitarian nonsense that is the book and the fake. You know what I'm talking about. It's just, and I heard a few days ago that the fake in the book, for the first time in its history, lost a bunch of money. Good. I think people are really starting to wake up to the totalitarian evils that they spread, you know, and their ridiculous abuses at censorship. And so I'm totally against that. And so I'm on Parler for that reason. So check me out there. It's in the description below. Hope you like this video. You can contact me below. My email or any donations are always warmly welcome in the link below. All the articles that I write for you and books are completely free. And I read every comment. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. I actually mean that, not just saying that, like everybody else just blathers the same nonsense all the time. Like, Abby, have a great day. How you doing? I don't really care, but I ask that question just to sound normal. You notice some people say that, how you doing today? They never want to hear anything other than fine. If you say something other than fine, I'm fine. How are you? It confuses them. It's like, how are you doing today? It's like, well, I'm pretty miserable. Thanks for. I was like, oh. I didn't expect you to say that. I don't really want to know how you're doing. They don't say that, but they're thinking that. Nobody really wants an accurate answer to that question. How you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. Thank you for asking. Fake superficialities. Yeah, totally fake. Thank you so much for watching. Lux e Veritas. Goodbye.